Hello, my name is Vera Teodorovic. I'm a scientist working at the Center for Translational Bone, Joint and Soft Tissue Research. Our institute is a part of University Hospital Carl Gustav Karus and Faculty of Medicine of the Technical University Dresden in Germany. I was moving a bit within Europe while developing my career in science, and I have realized that different local languages were quite important. In other fields, such as logistics, tourism, or diplomacy, the importance of languages is not questioned. It's never questioned, but in science, it is somehow never mentioned. So I would like to share my experience with different languages as European scientist. I am originally from Serbia, this small country in southeastern Europe. More precisely, I am from the northern region of Serbia called Vojvodina. It is autonomous region of Serbia. And more precisely, I come from the capital of Vojvodina, the city where this famous scientific couple used to live, because the woman was from there actually. Maybe this is not the most famous photo of them since they were very, very young here, but it is probably easier to guess now. Albert and Mileva Einstein used to live in this beautiful city of Novi Sad, actually in the neighborhood of my family house. As I said, the focus of this presentation is related to science, so I would like to explain my scientific path at first with the connection to foreign languages. It started with studies of biochemistry at the Faculty of Sciences at University of Novi Sad in Serbia. Complete studies were in Serbian language without any single course of foreign language, such as English, for example, considered as lingua franca and very much used in science. During these studies, we had exchange students from Portugal, but the communication with them was very, very poor since we were not able to speak English. It was more sign language than actually speaking. But as a student, I had an opportunity to go to a work and travel program to the USA, and I spent the entire summer in Alaska. Besides enjoying wonderful nature, I improved my English skills, which were very, very poor before this trip. Then, after coming back from Alaska, we had another group of exchange students, but this time from Austria. Conversation with them during practical lessons we had together was almost perfect, and it facilitated our and their work a lot. Everybody took an advantage of this exchange thanks to the English language. However, I never asked them was their everyday life in Novi Sad easy without speaking Serbian. My basic scientific knowledge was widened during master studies at the Faculty of Technical Sciences at the same university. I was studying advanced engineering technologies with final work in 3D printing of human mandible model. Here we had one short course of English. Meanwhile, I became fluent in English, but mostly thanks to finally 3 summers I spent in Alaska with other Europeans and, of course, Americans. This knowledge of English allowed me to obtain scholarship to do another master in molecular chemistry at the University Pierre et Marie Curie in Paris. It was announced that this master program was in English, but after 1 week of courses, many lessons switched to French because French students, who were a majority, could not completely follow. So I felt completely lost and I was pretty much forced to learn French if I wanted to pass the exams. Finally, it was not bad at all. At the end, my French was not very good, but I was able to understand professors while having written material in front of me. So combining hearing and reading, but speaking was not that good in that moment. So I could actually take the exams in English, which was good, but um, only speaking was the problem. Speaking of French, my scientific background started to widen, and I was motivated to stay in France and to continue my scientific path in the field of human tissue engineering by doing a PhD. I moved to Bordeaux, so city smaller than Paris, meaning less tourists and less foreigners in general. From my point of view, and probably everyone's point of view, it is mandatory to speak English at that level of doing science, since the most of scientific publications are in English. But the question is it really the reality? My direct supervisor, so the director of my PhD thesis, could speak very good English. He was very fluent in English. And some PhD students, however, we had to work a lot with engineers, technicians in a team, because science, and especially multidisciplinary research such as tissue engineering, which is my field of research, has to be performed as a teamwork. Technicians and engineers, many of them, felt more comfortable in French than English. In that moment, um, I had to learn a lot of things from zero, and I had to do it in French because it was easier for them to explain me things in their mother tongue. It was also necessary to exchange many information and results with the others, so just understanding French was not sufficient anymore. Now I'm talking only about working environment, not everyday life in France. So I have to mention it was not mandatory for me to speak French, but really to work in completely efficient manner. It was needed to understand and speak French. Now, going further with the topic of this presentation, doing science. What is actually needed for doing science? At first, of course, we need a scientist. In most cases, for natural sciences, one does not have a permanent position. In most of cases, scientists have temporary positions funded by different agencies after approving scientific proposals. Depending on the project, these funding periods can be usually from 6 months up to 3 years. It means that the scientist should search for new funding options to be sure to have a salary. Then, after approving a proposal and funding one or several scientists, including engineers, postdocs, PhD students, technicians, master students, they will all together execute the funded project. This execution goes through a design of experiments, performing the experiments, exporting obtained data into results, which will be presented at scientific conferences, published in scientific articles, or patents. In some cases, these results can be further translated to industry or clinics depending on the final application of the product. And even though now it seems like an end, it is not an end of this process. The cycle restarts, and these obtained results, in combination with new ideas, will be combined to apply for funding for next period. So this is never ending story. In order to prepare a proposal for application for funding, the first step is to select a funding source, funding agency. Funding agencies can be at national or international level. Some of them are connected to the industry or require a partner from industry. These are the most general ones, but there are many, many more. After choosing the funding agency, scientists start planning execution of the project and write a proposal. To do that, scientists have to work in teams, especially nowadays with interdisciplinary research such as tissue engineering, as I mentioned. This team can be at local level, meaning employees of the same lab or institute. Very often it is necessary that some experiments are performed at different lab of the same university or in different city of one country. Then it is very common to have international projects, for example, funded by European Union, which has different funding calls every year. And again, for specific projects, it is necessary to plan and execute projects together with people working in industry. So, the only way to succeed in this is to collaborate. This collaboration can be between people of the same lab, national or international level. Collaboration is very often directly connected with networking. Scientists can widen their networks during national and international workshops, summer schools, or seminars. Furthermore, scientific conferences are perfect for networking and developing collaborations. Again, they can be at national and international level. International gatherings are most often in English, but of course, there are some exceptions, such as, for example, the ones organized by France and Quebec or Austria and Germany, so by countries speaking the same language. Then we have different social networks. LinkedIn, ResearchGate, and Twitter are used nowadays by many scientists with an aim to keep national and international connections. Last, but definitely not the least, is international mobility of young and sometimes senior scientists, which is highly encouraged nowadays. All of these mentioned things are essential for collaboration. Many scientists are multilingual and use different languages in daily working basis, especially for collaborations. Science is built on collaboration. Collaboration is built on relationships. So something that is good for relationship between humans is going to be good and important for doing science, especially in engineering, where a lot of emphasis is put on teamwork. Collaboration and networking are furthermore very, very helpful for obtaining different scholarships, funding for projects, and development of scientific career. How we can use languages to enhance our career in science. Um, if we speak one language, let's say badly, we can use it for our work. However, to get high position in a career, one has to be integrated in the society to do a lot of paperwork, and good integration and good way of doing bureaucracy is always directly connected with good communication and good integration in the society. Now, I would like to share my personal experience regarding especially different languages while working in science in different European countries. And let's start with my current workplace in Dresden. Even though we live and work in Germany, our weekly lab meetings are in English because English is important for scientific communication, meaning that the most of highly rated and important scientific articles needed for developing new ideas or just performing experiments are in English. So all the supervisors and PhD students speak English. Furthermore, we have master and bachelor students doing internships who also speak good English. Then we have technicians who can speak English since they have to collaborate with the entire team. And even though everybody can speak English and our weekly meetings are in English, very often short discussions between smaller groups are in German, which is understandable since majority of the lab are Germans. It means that someone who does not have good German skills will not get some really small but maybe important tips or ideas from everyday discussions at the office or corridor. Then, as mentioned, we have to write scientific proposals to ensure our salaries for the future and to actually have budgets to perform wanted research. I have already said that there are different national and international funding agencies. International and some German agencies accept or require proposals in English, but there are many which accept proposals in German. I cannot say that this is obligatory for me to be fluent in German to work where I work now, but it's much helpful since I have more possibilities to keep my job. Another very important thing is that all the computer software are in German. When we performed an experiment, we obtain raw data by measuring certain signals, which we should export into charts or graphs, for example, and then just for that, we use basic Excel sheets. Well, Excel, PowerPoint, Word, all these basic programs are in German. And even if someone does not speak German, he has to be at that level to be able to use computer programs. Furthermore, we have to sign contracts, take care of our health insurance, bank accounts, etc. So to do some paperwork, all the bureaucracy is in German. As mentioned somewhere at the beginning of this talk, I spent some time in France before moving to Germany, where I did my master's and PhD. I already mentioned that it was necessary to learn French during master studies in Paris, but somehow I expected that English would be enough for PhD studies. Well, I was wrong. As I mentioned, my direct supervisor and some students, they could speak English, but some others felt more comfortable in French. As mentioned, a couple of times teamwork is essential, and students, technicians, and engineers work together. Again, the communication with them was more efficient in French. Furthermore, protocols for experiments were mostly written in French. Computer programs, the same as in Germany, were in French. All meetings at the lab were in French. As a student, I applied for different scholarships, such as to attend conferences, for example, and applications were mostly in French. And many other things I did not mention were in French. To have a wider overview, so out of just working at two mentioned labs, languages helped me a lot in scientific community. As a PhD student, I started collaboration in Serbian with professor from the Faculty of Technical Sciences at University of Novi Sad. This collaboration continued even after moving to Germany, and we still work and publish together. Also, thanks to my native language, I was quite successful in collaboration with faculty for dentistry at the same university. On the other side, I learned French, and it was finally at very good level, so I could apply and obtain different uh, scholarships to attend scientific conferences in French or to obtain awards for presentations. A very interesting one was the GFBTM, French Days of Biology of Mineralized Tissues, where I won an award the second time I attended this conference. The first time I presented my work in English. In that moment, my French was not that good. I could understand it, but not really speak. And I did not have any questions after my presentation. And I think that actually the audience did not really understand everything everything I said. It was actually national conference. So as I said, French Days of Biology. Next year, so second time I attended this conference, I presented my work in French and I got an award for my presentation. There were other small conferences, local student conferences at University of Bordeaux, which were very successful for me since my French was very good at that moment. At one of the French national conferences, it was National Conference for Biomaterials, I met a scientist from different city, Toulouse, who was principal investigator of the project, one project, with an open position for postdocs. So it was offered to me, and I could continue my scientific career in France directly after defending my thesis. However, English is considered as lingua franca for scientific community. Many and the most important scientific articles and conferences are in English. I completely agree that there should be one language that the most of scientists should understand, write, and speak to share their ideas and solutions. When we read scientific papers, we can sometimes realize whether it was written by a native speaker or not. But the fact that the paper was written by a native speaker does not make it easier to read. Some journals even insist on very high level of English proficiency. The spoken English between Anglophones is not the same as English as lingua franca. The point is that someone, a native English speaker who is writing the paper, should be able to think in more languages than just in English, to be able to express him or herself in a way to be easier to understand by scientists and their students from France, Germany, or Serbia. From my own experience, from many international scientific conferences, it was more difficult to understand native English speakers than any other foreigner speaking English with strong accent. It is very hard for native English speakers to put themselves in a position of someone who does not speak their language and to make it simple. Therefore, knowing and speaking other languages is important to at least have an idea how to improve that. Next point, science is international, and we often say that the most successful scientists are international or that they promote internationalism. However, it goes in two ways when we talk about the internationalism. What does it mean? It is going to a foreign country to work, live, work, but also accepting foreigners. Therefore, I'm not an international person just because I'm Serbian with PhD obtained in France and now working in Germany. I'm an international if I care for the society in which I live or used to live in that foreign country. At first it was France, now in Germany. Vulgarization of science, meaning explaining project for wide community. It is difficult even in mother tongue since most of things have been learned in English or local language. Serbian is my mother tongue, but it is very difficult for me to talk about my PhD topic, for example, because I was doing it in French and English, or some parts of my current work since some terminology I use only in German. Even though I do not feel very comfortable to have discussions in German. However, it is important to share our science with wide public. We are mostly paid by public money, so we should be able to explain to the public why our work is important. From other commercial point of view, when obtained scientific results are translated into product which is commercially available, this product has to be advertised and its use and importance should be clear to a wide range of people, not only with scientific background. So the success of someone's business would of course depend on the possibility to express scientific results in different ways in different languages. The point here is the communication between scientific world and the society. But the main problem is that scientists are not trained to communicate. Quite often, there is no language course at university for programs of natural sciences. Let's make a parallel between languages and science. Languages are related to the most of human-human interactions. Language is not only the way to communicate, but also to learn and to get the information. The same goes for science. Members of scientific teams share their results and information about new protocols for experiments and new ideas. So both have the exchange of information in common. The more languages we learn and speak, the more we think in different directions and can express ourselves in different ways. This way of thinking is also very important in science because we have to see the problem, to observe the problem from different perspectives. Therefore, learning different languages is like training the brain to work in different directions. If we speak a language fluently at certain level, B1 for example, but we do not know so many expressions, when we are training the language, we are becoming better and better in expressing ourselves. When presenting problems in our scientific research, we give possible solutions to other scientists or presenting our own results. Good representation of these things is one of the most important parts of writing a scientific proposal for funding, for example, which is essential for having scientists and paying their salary. Finally, curiosity and passion for languages, and we have curiosity and passion for science. There is no success in any of them without curiosity and passion. There is an interesting quote of Nelson Mandela which I would like to share with you. He said, "If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. But if you talk to him in his language, it goes to his heart." What is in the heart is closely connected to curiosity and passion. The most successful scientists are the ones who are the most curious and the most passionate. Another quote, again very interesting one, but this time very practical, comes from Willy Brandt, former German chancellor. He said, "If I'm selling to you, I speak your language. If I'm buying, dann müssen Sie Deutsch sprechen, which means then um, you must speak German. From my experience as junior or senior scientist, always in need of help from technicians or internship students, I was getting more if I could speak their language. Because some people, as I mentioned, they do not feel comfortable to express their opinion or ideas if they do not think that their English, French, or German is good enough. At the end, what I would like to point out from this talk, it is very important in science to communicate with the entire team due to a necessity for interdisciplinary research and an input from different members of the team, and their level of English or local language is not always at a high level. So as scientists, we should adapt to the environment and the local community to be successful in our work. Next, very important thing is collaboration, which is very often international and more efficient when we can speak each other's language. Then, writing proposals for funding, which is not less important than the first two things, of course. As I have mentioned, besides international funding calls, many countries or regions have local calls requiring applications in local language. If a scientist wants to promote in his career and to have high positions at university, for example, then he should be well integrated and deal with a lot of paperwork, which is always in local language. At the end, very important point is that science and learning languages are a journey, never-ending story. Finally, something that we should always keep in mind. Even if we know one language poorly, badly, we can still use it for its main purpose, to communicate.